Hey everyone, CJ here, back to animation mode, because I'm reviewing the latest Dungeons & Dragons adventure book, Waterdeep Dragon Heist. First of all, just a bit of a disclaimer, I'm basing my review on the digital D&D Beyond version of the book. This adventure was released on September 7th, but only to game stores and digital platforms like D&D Beyond, Fantasy Ground, and Roll20. It's going to be released everywhere else like Amazon and Barnes & Nobles on the 18th. But before you buy, let me tell you what you're going to get out of this adventure book so that you can decide for yourself if it is worth your hard-earned money. I must warn you though, that there are going to be some light spoilers here and there, but it won't be anything you haven't heard before from existing promotional materials. So this latest 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons book is set in the titular city of Waterdeep, in the Forgotten Realm setting. You can see the word Waterdeep in the title, so no false advertising here. The city is not only the largest and the most technologically advanced city in Faerun, it is also a very important location in D&D lore. It is a place where heroes cross paths and legends live. There are lots of characters important to D&D lore featured as NPCs. Lariel Silverhand, the Open Lord of Waterdeep for example, is featured in the game. Pro tip, don't mess with her, she's got more challenge rating than you have hit points. As the title suggests, this is an urban adventure. This adventure takes place completely within the confines of Waterdeep. Obviously, there won't be wilderness adventure for you, but it doesn't mean that rangers and barbarian characters are going to be useless here. The ability to track people is still going to be a very valuable skill in an urban setting. When this book was first announced, some people expected that we are going to get kind of a manual on how to run an adventure in an urban setting, like the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron's treatment on their main city, Sharn. Or maybe that was just me. But what we are getting is actually a complete adventure. The manual on how to run an urban adventure itself is baked into the main story campaign. This is very good, because as I have discussed in my previous video on world building, there is no point in creating a world if there is nothing to do in it. Waterdeep is a city, but in the scope of this adventure, it is the world, because everything happens within this city. The good news is that 8 out of 9 chapters in this book are adventure materials, and there is one big chapter that's wholly dedicated to life in the city itself. It is called Volos, Waterdeep, and Kyridian, and it is written in the voice of Volo. This guy, he has become quite the recurring character in 5th edition since the release of Volos Guide to Monsters. It provides comprehensive information on the city, including its history, legal code, culture, daily expenses, guides, guilds, holidays, and even information on the different wards in the city. It covers major features such as giant animatable statues that are littered around the city that can serve as defensive measure against extreme threats, down to little in-depth details such as the different names they have for that denomination. A nib for a copper piece, a shard for silver, a dragon for gold, sun for platinum, and even some unusual denominations used in Waterdeep like Peol and Harbor Moon, which are worth 2 gold and 50 gold respectively. There are also lists of local slangs and idioms used by the denizens and the city watch. It is pretty handy for Dungeon Master who want to inject more authenticity into the adventure. It's got enough materials to bring the city alive, turning it into a character of its own, instead of just a passive object to be acted on. What makes a city a character is that it has its own life, personality, and most importantly, its own goals, even if it is enacted by the officials and city watch. A city is made up of its citizens, and you can say that its will is the collective psyche of its inhabitants. It does not mean that it is sentient though, even though it is not in the realm of impossibility if you're talking about a fantasy setting. What makes an inanimate object really alive is that it can impose its will upon others, namely the player characters, the factions, guilds, and city watch, the watchful order of mages and protectors, and even the lords. They can impose their will onto you. Often, the adventure will come to the players instead of the other way around. And this segues us nicely into the adventure part of the book. The premise of this story is that hidden somewhere within Waterdeep is a humongous cache of gold. Not many people know about this, but those who do are dangerous, sinister figures who work in the shadows. Your player's motivation in this campaign does not necessarily have to be about lining their own pockets with more metal. good aligned characters may be motivated in stopping those evil factions from getting to the loot, so that they can prevent them from becoming too powerful. This book is advertised as a level 1 to 5 adventure, like the starter set, but if you use the milestone leveling up method, it is actually a tier 1 adventure where your players play from level 1 to 4, graduating to level 5 only when the campaign is over. Obviously, this adventure is more complicated than the starter set, and the players won't know for sure who they will end up facing against by the end of the campaign. Well, it wouldn't matter as much for the players, but it is good for the dungeon master, because if I decide to reuse the adventure for another group, it will stay fresh for me if I run it for the second time. What I like about the missions in here is that not many of them is about going into a dungeon and making your way to the end to kill a boss. There are plenty of missions variety, reconnaissance missions, social encounter missions, investigations, and so on. In fact, solving problems with violence is not going to be viable for most of the time, because if your players break any laws in the code legal, they are going to face severe punishments from the city watch. And bear in mind, they are no pushover. They are not the usual 1/8 challenge rating guards. A single one of these dudes is enough to wipe out your level 1 party, and they usually travel in medium-sized groups. So players would have to start to use their grey matter. Crafty players can use the law to their advantage and implicate or frame their enemies. Well, finally, there is an opportunity for the rules lawyers to use their powers for good. Personally, I like the direction the book is going. Less focus on combat, more time for other kind of hijinks. But what dungeon masters running this adventure need to be wary of is that there is going to be lots of investigation missions. Combat and fighting enemies are easy to understand. Attack and drop your opponent's hit points to 0 and you win. Even complete newbies know what they should do in combat, even if they might not be very good at it yet. But when it comes to investigation, puzzle and mystery solving, many players don't even know where to begin, especially when they are newbie players. Well, to be fair, some experienced players that I know may have difficulty doing the same, at least in the beginning, because despite the city having lots of facilities that they can use to help their investigation, they may not even know what options are available to them. It is going to take time to get them familiarized to the city without doing an info dump. Well, info dumping is never a good idea, so you kinda have to slowly feed them the lore of the city. But a more elegant solution for this is to have a guide NPC accompany the party to give them hints when they need it. Luckily, there is a lot of NPCs in the book that you can use. Volo, well, maybe let's not rely too much on Volo. Lariel, well, she might be too important, but there are plenty of other NPCs in there. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but you get the point. In terms of magical items, there are some really good legendary items in here. There are nifty ones like the Badge of the Watch and Paper Bird, but a really interesting item you can find here is the Smoke Powder. If I remember correctly, this is its first appearance in 5th edition. Smoke Powder is the Faerun's equivalent of gunpowder, so this really opens up more possibilities for your schemes. To be honest, I personally don't like gunpowder in my games, because it often ends up to be an easy solution to most problems. Difficult boss? Just lure him to a room full of gunpowder and boom. Impenetrable fortress? Just bring more gunpowders and boom! But I guess as long as you don't overdo it or give your players too much gunpowder, it's fine. A lot of these stuff I've been talking about have been relatively positive. One part of this book that I think is severely lacking is the base building feature. To be honest, it is not that great at all. There is not much you can do with the base, and despite all the investment your players could spend on it, the return is really measly. I can see why the designers of the book don't want to bolster this feature, because I can imagine that they don't want to distract the players from the main adventure, but at its current state, it is really disappointing. Hopefully though, they are going to improve on it on the second part of the adventure storyline, Dungeon of the Mad Mage. I don't know if that is going to happen though, I'm just hoping. Well, that's it for the review. Hope it has been useful for you. By the way, if there is anything that I missed, or you have any questions that I haven't addressed in the video, feel free to ask it in the comment section. I'll read all the comments and I will answer everything that I can. By the way, just before I go, here is a little Easter egg I discovered in the book. Wizards might be dropping hints of a possible future source book, Volos Guide to Spirits and Specters. What do you think? Is this going to happen? You can also comment on this below. If you want to get the book and help the channel out, you can use the affiliate link in the description below. But you don't have to force yourself to buy it. The point of this review is to help you decide. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and remember to subscribe for more contents from me. CJ, over and out.